This got a little long, but here's a van life ramble.
Hey there, YouTubers. You read the title, so you know what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about you've watched a whole bunch of van life videos and you think this is awesome, and it is, but you're wondering if it's really what they're talking about. And usually it is. Even me, I do everything I can to keep it real, but sometimes you end up seeing more of the wonderful perfect than you do a reality check. So this video is going to be a reality check. I wrote some notes down to try to keep it going. I'm going to try to go quick and not go into huge detail, so I'll probably miss stuff. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is it's expensive. Everybody thinks you can go live in a van and your life is automatically going to be cheaper. That's not true. If you're buying something new that's pre-made, like a van from one of the major companies that makes them, you're talking $100, $150, up to $200,000 for the van. If you want to buy and build your own, say you want to get a new Ford Transit or Dodge or whatever you want to get, and you got the shell and the empty back, you're at least $40,000 on those. Then you got to do the work inside, where if you're going to do it yourself, it's probably 10 grand at least. Well, depending on how well you do it. If you pay somebody to do it, it's going to be a lot of money. If you do like I do, I now have a 23-year-old Class B that I love. That's great. I've been very lucky compared to a lot of people. I haven't had to continually sink a lot of money into it, but it does get more expensive. My van, I was just calculating stuff up, and I consistently always, I did a trip to the West Coast and back to Washington State, back to Ohio, and I consistently got at least 15 miles a gallon, you know, within a mile or two either way. And sometimes I got extra, like going down the mountains, but I got less going up the mountains. But at 15 miles a gallon, usually when you stop for a tank of gas, you're at least putting 70 bucks in the tank. So it can get expensive. If you're going to stay at campgrounds, that can get expensive too. So don't think it's the cheapest way to live, because it's not always. Okay, now I'm going to get to the list that I have. And these are going to be in no particular order. If you're going to do a lot of boondocking, you really need solar. I don't do a lot. I do more campgrounds because I have pets, and we're going to talk about pets. But I have a friend right now who's down way south in Texas, and guess what? Even though it's January and it's supposed to be warmer, it's still cold there. So you have times when you have to run a propane furnace, or you have to use a Mr. Buddy, and it can get cold even in the winter when you're in a warm place. And with that, if you're going to set up a really cool solar, things with really good batteries, like maybe you're going to go all the way to lithium, you're going to get a bunch of panels, that's expensive too. Then you have to decide, do I want to line my roof with solar panels, which is cool, but if it's hot out, then you have to kind of park in the sun to get your batteries charged, which is, a give and take. Sure, your batteries are charging better, but you're in the heat. Or if you want to get like a suitcase, a portable kind that you can set out in the sun and try to park in the shade while available, then you have to deal with that. You have to find a place in a small van that we're going to talk about again to store those panels. Sometimes you have to worry about somebody doing the 5-finger discount and taking them away. So there's pluses and minuses to everything you do. And don't think setting your van up with solar is really cheap, because it's not. And if you do mostly campgrounds, I would suggest don't put the money into solar that you're not going to use a lot. And if you do mostly off-grid camping, then you're going to need it. And a generator, probably. Okay, again, more of the random order. It's just going to be what it is. I jotted some stuff down. Showering in a small van, doable, but it can be a pain. Limited space, and you're always worrying about water. One of the huge things about when you're doing a lot of off-grid stuff, it becomes a constant concern about getting water, dumping water, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. A lot of people will choose to shower at gyms, like you get a Planet Fitness, and as you travel around, you can go there and shower. With COVID going on, I've heard a lot of places, some gyms have shut down, some gyms that stay open, close their shower areas down. So when COVID comes along, that's a whole different thing too. So keep that in mind. Okay, and next, the thing you have to worry about. I do my best when I make a video inside this van. I don't want to show you how it looks when it's a mess. And trust me, in a small van, they get a mess a lot. So you're constantly battling clutter and stuff like that. I've said in videos in the past, I have, in this 1999 leisure travel, I have about as good as storage as you're going to find in any Class B. That is one of the best aspects of this. Even that said, I have to play a shuffle game. I have to move things around to get to stuff. There's clutter all the time. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it can get really frustrating at times. And then you look at some other vans that don't have as good a storage as I have in mine, and just dealing with the clutter and moving stuff in a small space isn't always the greatest thing in the world. Okay, something that's cool and has a downside. You're constantly traveling. You're going from place to place. It is fantastic to find new places. But it also at times can get a little old that you're in new areas. You got to do a lot of research on how to find a place to camp, whether you're going to a campground or whether you're finding some place to boondock for free, or you're doing urban camping, which is a whole different animal. Sometimes people don't like you parking in front of their house. They see your van as being a little sketchy. So you got that to deal with. It's still great. All this stuff, it's still great. That said, cops don't usually like people in vans. They kind of look at you not much different than a common hobo. You know what I mean? And you have to learn. Don't argue with them. Don't fight with them. Don't create a ruckus. Just deal with it. A lot of people love to camp in Walmarts, you know, for a night or two and stuff like that. Personally, not a fan. Because, and we're going to talk about this more, I have 2 cats that I travel with. And a large majority of people that travel around in vans have a pet. My problem has been when I go to Walmarts is usually they can be a bit crowded and constant activity. And my animals hear that stuff outside and they're on the move all the time, and it's very difficult to get rest. So you think, well, I'll just camp at a Walmart. Everything will be wonderful. I'll spend a night. It's not always as easy as it seems. Not all places that you're going to do that, like a Cracker Barrel, all the different options of where you can stay in a town or along the highway for free, they're not all created equal. So you have to keep that in mind. Oh, something that people think about a lot. Relationships. If you're going to have a relationship and you're traveling in a Class B. If you're traveling with another person, it's very cramped. People need personal space. You have to have a good, strong relationship before you can do that without a lot of conflict. And you have to learn that there are going to be moments where everybody needs their own personal space, and you have to keep that in mind. If you're single and open to having relationships, at first there are many people that might think it's pretty cool that you're living a cool life, you're traveling in a van. But that, for a lot of people, wears thin pretty quick. I like to think that when you're looking for a relationship with somebody, it's good to have a lot of common interests. You know, that's like why you see movie stars tend to date movie stars. Athletes often date other athletes because they know how it goes. Porn stars date other porn stars because they know about that stuff. Well, a lot of times you may find that the best way to have a relationship with somebody is somebody that's already like-minded. They can, if they're not, you can start off where they think it's cool at the beginning, like I said, and then quickly go, yeah, this isn't really for me. So relationships can be difficult when you're traveling in a van. I'm just checking off these things. Another thing that I had written down, it is a small space. This van is 20 feet long. So that's a small space for me. That's a small space if somebody's with me. That's a small space for my pets. That's a very small space for the things I want to carry. You can be limited. And again, I'm super fortunate. I have an RV van that has awesome storage. They're not all the same. So a small space is cool, but it's a small space. Cooking in a van can be difficult. I have a very small refrigerator to carry stuff. I do cooking videos. I often use a lot of the same spices, a lot of the same seasonings. If I make a cooking video, well, I do a lot of vegan now, so people aren't commenting, but if I do normal cooking when I was eating meat and doing all that stuff, you will often get suggestions of, well, you should use this and you should use that. Well, you'll find when you're traveling in a small van with limited storage space for dry goods, let alone a small refrigerator, you tend to eat a lot of the same things over and over. You know, you have your staples because you don't have the space to keep everything. When I cook, I tend to try to cook everything with as minimal amount of cleaning up that I have to do. So I will kind of cook in batches sometimes. I will use one frying pan. That might be I cook something, I get it out of the way, I use the same frying pan to finish cooking something else, then I'm warming stuff back up. You're often cooking with minimal amounts of stuff because doing dishes is a pain. I've said this many times. My sink in my van, I almost never use it because it's tiny and you make more of a mess than anything. So I travel with a bucket and then I heat my water up with my coffee pot, and then every few days I do my dishes. I don't do my dishes every day. I will take like a disinfectant wipe, a Lysol wipe or whatever, and after a meal, I'll wipe all my stuff down, I'll store it, and then once I have a couple days worth of dishes, then I'll do my dishes. Because it is a pain in a van, as opposed to your house, to wash up a few things. A lot of people will just use paper products to stop that, paper plates and stuff. I just don't like eating off of paper plates. Then you'll find that when you're in a van, you have some things to worry about. For me, it doesn't cause me intense conflict or intense anxiety or anything, but there are a lot of things you have to think about, like you have to do research to find out, where am I going to sleep? There are a lot of people that will travel and then once it gets dark, they decide, okay, now I have to find some place to sleep. That doesn't work well for me. It may work well for you, but I like to get someplace and be able to relax. And oftentimes it can be difficult to relax when you're traveling in your van. Say you go to a Walmart or someplace like that, and there's noise. Again, with the pets, they're hearing noises outside. You hear noises outside. Is that just a normal noise, or is somebody, I got to deal with some idiot? Is that a cop? It sometimes can be difficult to relax. One thing that is funny, I guess, or maybe it's not funny. This crap's gotten too popular. This van life stuff has gotten far too popular. There's too many people out there. And that can be a pain. Now, if you're watching this and you want to do it, I want you to do it. I want you to do whatever you like. Even though I'm showing some of the reality check stuff, the not perfect stuff, it's still fantastic. But more and more people doing it, places getting more and more crowded. It makes things a little bit more difficult, to be honest. And you got to be honest if you're going to do this stuff. And COVID, don't talk about COVID. COVID has made things more difficult because there are so many more people doing it, the distancing and all that stuff. COVID has made things more difficult. So even if you're kind of a solitary person, you know what I mean, that you don't mind being alone and may even at many times like being alone, if you're traveling as a single person in a van, it can get bad. It gets terrible for people who need a lot of human interaction, and it can get bad for those that don't quite need as much. And oftentimes you find yourself, you develop kind of superficial relationships at times. You might meet somebody and hang out for a day or two and make like a pseudo friendship. And other times you make actual good friends that you keep talking to for a long time. I also find for me, what gets on my nerves sometimes is when you're doing this, most of the people you interact with, all your topics of conversation oftentimes are about living in a van or traveling in a van, you know, and that gets old. There are other things in life to talk about other than how you're living in a van. There's real stuff to talk about too. Okay, you'll also find, like, I am a pretty independent person and I don't always like asking people for help. And sometimes living the van life, you need to do that. Whether it's something broke in your van and maybe somebody that's camping at a campground or wherever you're at, maybe you find somebody that's got some skills that could help you. You might need to ask for help. I was traveling cross country and I was looking for places to stay because it was well over 100 degrees all the time. We're going to talk about weather too. But when you're driving and trying to find a place, I was lucky enough that I got a friend over the phone. I said, I'm trying to find some place in this general area. Because when you're traveling alone, it's hard to do that stuff by yourself. So a friend was able to help me with some options, and that can come in handy. But you got to be able to ask people for help sometimes. And you can be really self-sufficient traveling in a van, but don't let that make you think that you're never going to need to reach out to somebody, whether it's family, something goes wrong, you might need some type of assistance, or a friend that, hey, can I park in your driveway for a couple days? There are going to be times when you're not always unable to ask for help. Sometimes you may need to ask for help. I just looked at the list. Laundry. Laundry is a thing. Laundry, when you're traveling in a van, laundry becomes a thing. There are some people that will get out there and say, I own 3 t-shirts and 2 or 3 pairs of shorts. I'm a minimalist. I don't carry all these clothes. I'm not that way. That person might be washing their clothes in a bucket sometimes. I'm not that way. So I take more clothes than I need. And then when you have a limited amount of space, you have to store the clothes. Then you have to store your dirty clothes. Like I have a fully functioning bathroom right here. But if I show you that in a video, it's usually going to look all cool and nice. But the reality is, when I'm traveling, there's usually a big laundry bag full of dirty clothes sitting on top of my RV toilet in there. Because you got to do stuff like that. And then once you decide, okay, it's laundry time, I've gone as long as I can go. Hopefully you haven't stunk up your van too much with your stinky clothes. Then you have to dedicate a lot of your time to doing laundry. If you're living in a house, you do your laundry while you're doing the rest of your normal life. Laundry becomes a thing. Okay, I already said that. All conversations become about van life. Not everyone wants to date somebody who lives in a van. It might seem cool at first. I already said that. We're checking these off the list. Next, if you need to see a doctor, whether it's something minor that you might need to see a doctor or something serious where you're traveling on the road and maybe you're living full time and you need to see a doctor. You're in an area, you don't know anybody, you don't know where to go. There's a lot of research that needs to be done when you're traveling around living in a van, and seeing a doctor is another one of those things that you should keep in mind. Hopefully we're all healthy all the time and that's not a big concern. But real life, sometimes that's a concern. I haven't had to see the doctor on the road yet.
Your diabetic cat might need a vet.
Vans are easy to drive. They are much easier than a big van or a big RV, a big 40-foot Class A or something like that, or towing something behind it. That can be tricky. I've done both. They aren't, oh my God, hard, but a van is easier. But with a van, almost everybody I know that has a Class B, whether it's one they bought pre-made or made themselves, they're tall, short wheelbases. Driving in the wind can really tire you out. Driving in a lot of traffic can really tire you out. You're not in a car. If you're trying to merge onto traffic on a highway or something like that, you don't have the power in this thing that you have in your car. So they are a little bit more difficult to drive, a little bit more tiring to drive. 10, 11 hours driving a Class B van, you've had a day, normally. All right, we're through the first page. Okay, so you're excited. You've watched a lot of van life videos, and you think, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. When I first got this van years ago, that honestly was my plan. I bought it. It took me a while, but then I had a plan that I was going to live in this full time. I didn't need to keep a place where I store my stuff. And I found out after a few months that living full time in a van wasn't exactly how I wanted to do it. I call myself I'm not full-time, I'm most time to part-time. And I'm excited every time I pull out of my driveway where I keep this thing when I'm not traveling. I'm excited, ready to go explore new places. And then when that is over and I'm heading back and getting close to my own driveway, I'm honestly a little excited about that as well. It's good sometimes to take a break and be able to take more than 6 steps inside a van, because I can't make many steps in here. And after a few months in a van all day, every day, it can be a lot. That's why many people that travel in vans, maybe once a month or every so often, they go rent a hotel room so where they can spread out, take a shower whenever they want to take it, and just relax with a little bit more space. I always thought too when I got this that, well, I will go everywhere in this. You know, say I go to a campground and I want to explore the area. Well, it takes me 5 minutes. I'll pack everything up and I'll drive around and go explore. Again, traveling with 2 pets. I found that's more of a hassle, so I end up using my bike a lot more. There are a lot of people that travel in vans and they drive and explore everywhere in their van. And for me, because of the pets, predominantly, that becomes old. So I like to get to a place, get it set up, and then I do my exploring other ways. My house car, as a cousin of mine called it, it can become a pain to drive your house everywhere you want to go when you're out traveling. My big trip back to out west, when I got to my destination, the van sat there for almost a month and we used a car to go explore around. And that'll tie into another thing. I drove all the way through the Rockies to Washington State, and on that trip, it was almost every day was over 100 degrees. So I'm driving what's now a 23-year-old RV through the Rocky Mountains, and it's 100 degrees, and you develop a little bit of concern about your vehicle. There can be added stress to driving. You know, I showed a lot of beautiful videos of driving through the Rocky Mountains, which not many people were interested in, by the way, but it was stunning and it was beautiful. But there are times during that where you're concerned when you're like, okay, I want to take it easy on the van. I don't want to break my house car. So I got to the top of a mountain and I'm doing like 35, 40 miles an hour, you know? So there can be a little bit stress of that. The heat. I got to Tacoma and that heat dome was going on. It was 115 degrees and I was in stop and go traffic. The heat in the engine was getting high. I was worried about the van overheating. So I have a cat that rides on my lap. It's 115 degrees and I'm trying not to run the air conditioner in the van because I don't want my van to overheat in stop and go traffic. It's not always the wonderful thing we try to portray it to be. Weather counts a lot. Like I said, I have a friend that's down there darn near the Mexico border right now in Texas, and it's cold down there. You have to be prepared for weather. Weather is a huge thing. You'll find yourself using your phone apps trying to predict the weather a lot more. You know, the common saying is north in the summer, south in the winter. Well, anymore it seems like, you know, nobody expects 115 degrees when you're near Seattle, Washington, but that happens. You're not going to boondock that way. That's unbearable. These, no matter how well you vent these and try to get airflow through them, it gets hot in here, and mine is well insulated. If you build your own and don't insulate them well, it's a hot box or a freezer box, whichever type of weather you're in. So the weather matters a lot. Okay, so I'm looking down at my list again. I talked about clutter and a mess. It could get messy in your RV or your van. Clutters and mess happen quick, even when you're doing your best to keep stuff going. Not everything is the Instagram photo of a back door all opened up. Somebody with nice legs is laying there looking out over the ocean. It's not always like that. There are times it is just like that. I've done it. I don't know how nice my legs are, but I've done it. I talked about the bathroom, traveling around with a van bathroom. Again, glorified porta potty on wheels. They can smell. I do everything I can not to use mine. I try not to shower in here, but I've done it quite a bit. Again, the water, you're always on the search for water, or a lot of people are. I tend not to use that much. I buy gallon jugs of water, and I have a 5-gallon jug that I keep in my wardrobe closet, and that's what I use for my water most of the time. If I'm at a place where I can refill, if there's a spigot, then I'll just refill a gallon jug and I'll use that to do my dishes. And then, yeah. So, but water for most people becomes a huge issue, that you're always looking for water. You find yourself always looking for a place to stay. I think I touched on this. You're doing a lot of research. You got your phone out. You're trying to figure out where I can stay here, where I can stay there. Some people love to plan a whole trip out. If you do that, that can be difficult. It can be reassuring that you know where you're going to be next, but it can be difficult. You can look someplace up online and, oh, that looks like a great place to boondock, or it looks like a great campground. When you get there, it's not always what you hoped it would be. Sometimes it's better. Oftentimes it's not. Everybody says, I'm going to travel and I'm going to do YouTube. That's how I'm going to make my money. Maybe you will. I have found my channel, again, is not all that popular. I can't make a living doing this. And it gets tedious if that's what your plan is. If your plan is, I'm going to use social media to fund my travels, it's not as always easy as you think. And then you spend a lot of time working on that stuff. So I would say, don't go into this planning on that being your source of income, that I'm going to be the 3 millionth van life video maker out there. There's a lot of competition. And then you have to do things to garner people's attention. So be careful of that. But again, you're always looking for a place to stay. You will miss people. If you have close groups of friends, wherever back home may be, or your family, there will be times that you miss people. So you got to be prepared for that. But it's also a fantastic way to visit those people that you may have been missing in your normal part of your life. Now you have a van. You can travel and meet old friends. You can go see family that have moved to different parts of the country. So there's a win-win in a lot of things, or there's a win sort of loss in a lot of things. But you can find a balance. Okay, so I'm looking at the list again. I talked about cops don't always like us. Don't assume everybody wants you to park your van in front of their house. Being in unfamiliar places, I said, it's really cool. But sometimes it can be a little stressful when you're in unfamiliar places, trying to find a grocery store, trying to find this, trying to find that. I don't think you can do this at all. Well, I'm sure you can. I'm sure a lot of people can. But without a cell phone, finding stuff that you need and research and all that stuff, there's far more research that goes into it than people think. People think I'm just going to flip a quarter and turn whatever direction I want to turn. I've done that a few times. Some people might do it a lot. But you still have to do some research on where you're going to be. You have to figure out if you can survive in a van that you cannot stand up in. I can't. You might be able to. I need to be able to stand up. I need a bed. You might find out that you can just sleep on a little foam pad on the floor. I need a bed. You got to find out what that is. As I said, I think I said, it's harder to do anywhere work. You know, I can work from anywhere. It's harder to do anywhere work than you think. Using your cell phone for Wi-Fi or finding free Wi-Fi isn't always as easy as you think. Whether you're doing YouTube or social media, promoting yourself to try to make a living, or you're doing actual real work, you know, where you're working for a company and you're doing stuff remotely, you either have to invest a lot of money or you have to invest a lot of time on finding places where you can get that connectivity. It's not as glorious finding connectivity that people think. Burnout. Burnout, van life burnout is a thing. I have suffered from it. Most everybody I know has suffered from it. There have been times when I've been in the van 3-4 months, no burnout. There's been times I've been in the van for a month and I'm like, oh, I'm over this. You know, again, traveling with pets can be very difficult. I wouldn't not do it, but I wouldn't recommend go buy a van and then go buy a pet. I wouldn't recommend that. They become a very integral part of how you travel. So dealing with them, making sure they're safe, changes how you travel. And there are times, again, when a small space and 3 things in here with me all the time that breathe oxygen, me and 2 cats, you can get on each other's nerves. You can feel just claustrophobic with them. They feel the same way. There are downsides. Just keep that in mind. But you travel in a van to beat the burnout. You're traveling in a van because the door's right there. This is a small place. Go outside. Go do the exploring you're supposed to do. But also don't think just because now you've went and bought a van that automatically everything you like and want to do is going to change. You lived in a house forever and you never used to go on hikes or walks or stuff like that. Don't assume that all of a sudden now that's your favorite thing to do. You're still going to be who you are, you know? Okay, we're getting towards the end. One thing that I think is funny, sometimes people will think, well, I'll hang out with other friends. 3 or 4 of us can sit in my van. We'll have a good time. We'll drink. We'll do whatever. We'll have fun. No, you won't. A 20-foot van, it's too crowded for 3 or 4 people to be sitting around in here. Again, that's why you go outside. Now, hopefully, as I'm trying to close this up, because it's probably gotten too long, I did my best. I swear to you, I tried to go quick. Left a lot of stuff out, I'm sure. But nothing I said, hopefully, will discourage anybody from trying to live the van life, whether you want a full-time or you want a part-time. Just have knowledge. Don't jump into something thinking that the world is always going to be wonderful, because it isn't always going to be wonderful. But it is a great way to do it. Go into it with an open mind, saying, I want to learn how I react to this and how this works for me. And then once you've figured out your best way to do this with fun, excitement, and everything that it should be, then that's how you should pattern your van life, the ways that make you happy. Just because you see somebody on YouTube or whatever social media doing it one way, don't assume that that's the only way or that's absolutely going to work for you. You find your way. Take your time. If you get a little burnout, take a little break from it. I would suggest, if you can, to have a place to live before you jump into van life. Some people will just get rid of everything. I'm off in the van, no looking back. I think sometimes it's a good idea to take a couple trips for a little extended amount of time and see how you're best going to like doing the van life thing. So that's it. I talked a lot. I talked too fast probably because I was trying to make this not too long. Take a reality check, but don't make a reality check change your dream. If you have a dream of doing this, chase it. Just go into it with an open mind, and guess what you'll have? If you've been
Stupid GoPro died, but if you've been watching, you know, have a great and wonderful day.